it's Christine Grace. Welcome back to my channel. Today is another episode of The Latest Lunacy. So like the video on your way in, let's get straight into it. So I've decided to call today's video, Women, Please, for the Love of God, Pick a Lane. Wanting to reap the rewards of a society that required no effort from you to build is not equality. It's supremacy. It's superiority. Women are master manipulators. Don't forget that. Manipulation is our version of brute strength. So don't let the headlines fool you and don't let social media commentary deceive you. Gynocentrism, or rather female supremacy, is still the central pillar of most institutions that rule the West. And if women are supreme, where does that leave men? Why don't we just take a brief look at any moment in history where supremacy has overtaken a society? Yeah, it doesn't tend to end well for those who are considered inferior. What makes all of this all the more infuriating is feminists' sheer ignorance, whether willfully or not, to the hypocrisy of their claims. We hate racists, we hate homophobics, we hate misogynists. Well, what do all of these ists and isms have in common? Supremacy. The racist thinks they're superior to other racists, misogynist thinks they're superior to women, and the homophobe thinks they're superior to people who are gay. Now, I'm not saying any of this is ethically or morally correct. I hate hate, though I do respect order and boundaries. It's far too big of a conversation for me to get into now, and I'm certainly not the person to prescribe a solution for these issues. As the feminists say, I'm just a girl. Kidding, obviously. But what I do know is that if the diagnosis is superiority and supremacy, and they have concluded that these isms are bad, then the most stupid prescription would be to create a new one. Feminism believes women are superior and men are inferior. Everything they believe is incorporating the same core tenet, supremacy, which they claim to despise. Which takes us into today's stories. Today's video contributors are Duncan and ChickleRock1, who brought some of these stories to my attention over in my WhatsApp community. So thanks for raising this one, guys. I had also seen a couple of things recently that I just thought tied together really nicely into all of this. So yeah, let's get into today's episode. So this was the first thing which ChickleRock1 showed me, which is, okay, millennial feminism is dead, what comes next? And it was an article posted by a lady called Susie Weiss. And she is the co-founder and reporter of this magazine or newspaper, The Free Press. So as you can see from this image, I'm not going to read it out, but you can probably guess that this is going to be rather fun. So Susie says she was walking through the park this week and saw a folding table set up with a sparkly purple tablecloth manned by a woman in a purple beret. Buy weed from women, join the movement. A large sign in front of the table read. That's sort of odd, I thought to myself. And then a friend sent me a post from the editor-in-chief of Jezebel. What a lovely title for a magazine. The feminist blogging site popular in the 2010s that's somehow still going, reminding its readers that it's still covering abortion rights and calling out celebs. At this point, I had to accept it. Helen Lewis is right. So if you don't know what she's referring to, there was an article that came out making the claim feminism is dead. Which is this one from The Atlantic, The Death of Millennial Feminism. Lindy West has unwittingly written the obituary for an era. And then you've got this like tombstone that says girl boss on it, which I actually think is a good thing. So yeah, she's obviously made this claim that feminism is dead, and this lady is saying, she's right. Millennial feminism, which has apparently committed itself to breaking into male-dominated world of drug dealing and cancelling Gwyneth Paltrow, it's past its use-by date, or at least it's become a caricature of itself. Lewis wrote about this in an essay this week about Lindsay West's memoir, Adult Braces. The book is about how West forced herself to an embrace and an open marriage that her husband insisted on. I will cheat on you and you will like it. Lewis's point was that the memoir was the nail in the coffin for early internet feminism. At the beginning, the movement felt intoxicating and liberating, but it soon became clear that sticking with millennial feminism would require submitting ourselves to a voluntary lobotomy. Yeah, no shit. After all, Lindy West essentially did it. The party's over, power down the blog spot, pour out the Pinot for those that came before us. The obituaries for this heady time are and will continue to be rich texts. Who could forget the futurist female t-shirts, the vagina hats, the girl bossification of the boardroom, and the dehumanization of television. I don't know how anyone could have possibly thought that any of this was going to end in a positive way. As I said at the beginning, it is supremacy, it is superiority, it never ends well. I'll continue. The dawn of social media brought with it feminism that preached rage rather than equity. There were a myriad of confessional essays about soul-crushing jobs, mental illness, bad dates, and about the act itself of sharing things online. Which women love to do, which we know all too well on this channel. But as women let it all hang out in their writing, the central tenets of this kind of feminism got more narrow and alienating. To be a feminist at the peak of millennial feminism was to believe, at least publicly, that among a million other commandments, trans women are women and sex work is work. Then #MeToo demanded that all women believe all the other ones. There was breakdown along the lines of who was a TERF, which is essentially like a feminist who doesn't believe that trans women are women, and who bought into intersectionality, which said that feminism had to take into account multiple compounding identities. In other words, white women to the back. Again, nice. You know, how do we beat inequality with more inequality? It's just like, please, either you don't like inequality or you do. At the same time, the past 15 or so years saw women take up a lot more space in C-suites, universities, and media. Another Helen called this time the Great Feminization. In short, women are one. They're referencing Helen. Is it Helen Andrews? I think her name is. We've spoke about her before on my channel. Helen, I've reacted to a video of hers. I'm sure her name. Yeah, Helen Andrews. This lady. You guys remember her? So she's obviously talking about this woman in a mocking and degrading way, but she wasn't wrong. In short, women won big all over, and somewhere along the way we forgot what feminism was even for giving confidence to young women to follow their dreams, for yelling at some guy who fumbled a pass, for bearing your deepest secrets online and starting OnlyFans. Yeah, that is what's happened. So now that this wave of feminism is dead and buried, what will follow, I think this is a golden opportunity to reshape the new era of feminism. This is what I can't understand, right? I guess I can. You know, I was going to say, if it hasn't worked before, why would you try again? But then, you know, you could argue my logic with, well, someone who's trying to start a company has to fail like 100 times before they finally succeed. Fine. But I do think there's a distinct difference here, you know? A business has in mind its business and what it's trying to achieve. The problem with feminism is that they're always looking to put these new plans in place. They're always looking to achieve these things, but they're never actually able to articulate exactly what it is that they want. Now, they do have an objective and they do actually know what they want, but there is a reason why they will not say it in the public space. And this goes back into what I was saying at the beginning. Women are master manipulators. This is why you have to be careful. So what she's saying right here, now that feminism is dead and buried, what will follow? This is a golden opportunity to reshape the new era of feminism into something that actually serves women in the real world. Sounds great, right? You know, anyone who isn't an actual misogynist and doesn't hate women, you know, what could sound bad about, you know, giving women a golden opportunity for something that actually serves them in the real world? Sounds great, doesn't it? These are all just fluffy words. That's not the objective here. There is an objective, which we'll get into in a bit. But yeah, just watch out for it, guys, because unless I have more respect for an outrageous feminist who is willing to say, these are the evil things that I stand for, you know, at least they are stating, this is my objective and this is how I'm going to get there. It's the feminists that fluff it all up and say, we're for equality, we're for equity, we're for fairness, when when you pull apart their logic, none of that makes any sense. As I said at the beginning, you know, they say they hate all of these isms. They say they hate supremacy and superiority while simultaneously creating it. As women let it all hang out in their writing, the central tenets of millennial feminism got more narrow and alienating. She's basically saying that women still have it hard and all of that effort from previous feminists hasn't worked out, so let's try again. She's obviously one of these diehard feminists who is just so desperate for the idea not to die out. So you get the gist. Essentially what she's saying is that the old version of feminism hasn't worked, so let's try something else. But she's still using the same tactics. She's still positioning women are oppressed. You know, she's talking about a bunch of issues here. The debate over assisted suicide, where a woman was affected by it. She's raising some real issues, right? But again, it's like these are real issues that do affect both sexes. Again, here she's talking about conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility, endometriosis, and post-SSRI sexual dysfunction. These are genuine women's issues that need to be spoken about. She's saying how there's been a glut of coverage about how motherhood is a trap and about the women who regret stepping into it. You know, again, these are genuine women's issues that do need to be fixed, but doing it under the guise of feminism, I don't think is ever going to work because of what feminism is. I'm not even going to say has become, because it is what it is. It's always been this malicious attack on men. It's always been about supremacy for women. Then she starts talking about Jeff Ross. He's got these vicious roasts on Comedy Central. He told Courtney Love that she looks worse than Kurt Cobain 11 years after his suicide. Like, yeah, it's a roast. And then she's basically just going in on him and saying that, like, well, he can give it, but he can't take it. It's like, well, it's a roast. She doesn't actually make a point. This is the trouble. She doesn't actually make a point about anything. Her whole idea is essentially just, well, women have problems, so let's just try feminism again. But she's not actually giving any real prescription to anything. She raises a lot of important issues that are problems, but again, she's not talking about how that affects us as one. You know, the attack on motherhood, that doesn't just affect women, that affects men too. Why does it affect men too? Because if women are not going into motherhood, then they are still in the workplace. They are still taking all the DEI hires. If women have all the money, then there's not as much money left for men. And then that's causing an even bigger divide between the sexes. Homath has an amazing video on this. If you haven't seen it already, you should definitely go check it out. But I know that most of you guys understand all of this and understand why, you know, we need to start having joint conversations about issues that are facing men and women. I think the separation of it all and acting like these are two problems alongside each other that aren't connected is just getting ridiculous, because they are absolutely connected. The problem is that feminism came around and split it all. You know, it was never, you know, men were around and they had all the work and the careers and stuff, and then they started to oppress women. It's like, no, men went to work and they were part of a family. It was one thing. You were part of one unit. Anyway, so this is what's been going on recently in the feminist sphere. Feminism is dead because of all of these things, and we need to give it a revival, because if we don't, then the big bad men are going to come and destroy us. Now, the reason I am telling you women are master manipulators and why you need to be very careful of these kind of headlines, because these kind of headlines would suggest that, maybe women are waking up. Maybe if a woman starts saying she's a feminist now, it doesn't actually mean that she hates me. Maybe, you know, she does just want equality. Maybe. But let me show you why these are nothing but fluffy headlines and women talking about, you know, how they're not doing anything malicious, they just care about women, and how that is not true. So, this is the other thing that I saw. So this is a story that is happening in Germany right now. This was posted 3 days ago. Germany triggers debate by requiring men under 45 to get a permit for trips longer than 3 months. Let's check it out.
In Germany, a new law requiring men between 17 and 45 to get military approval for extended stays abroad is prompting widespread debate. The law, which went into effect in January, could affect millions of people. It requires men of military age to get permits from Germany's armed forces for travel, work, or study abroad that exceeds 3 months. The new requirement is part of legislation aimed at increasing active duty soldiers. Mandatory military service was suspended in Germany in 2011. The new provision went largely unnoticed until a local newspaper called attention to it this week.
And this is what I'm talking about. All of the actual malevolence, the true ambitions of feminists, which is to destroy men and make women supreme, goes under the radar because that is how women operate. We don't have brute force. So we're not just gonna, rock up into an office and, wrestle the CEO away from the position and give it to a woman. No, it is done from the inside. It is done secretively. It is done slyly. It is done sneakily. We can apply this to, that's at the macro level, but we can apply this to the micro level as well. How do women disarm men in relationships? Well, they don't just start fighting them. Some do, the crazy ones, but the majority of women who have a malicious intent for their partner will start to withdraw intimacy. Then claim, oh, it's because I'm tired. See, the real intention is to punish the man. It's to hurt the man, but it is fluffed up, It's me, I'm just tired, I don't feel like it. In the same way, women intend to strip men of any power they possibly have in society, take it for themselves, but they will fluff it up. It's equality. I just want a fair trade here. I just want to be treated as equal, even though they already do. They already do treat you equal. In fact, up until recent history, I would argue that women were superior to men. Hear me out here. Women don't have to, go and fight the wars. Women don't have to do the hard jobs. In fact, men literally built this society the way they did to protect us. Because if they didn't, we would all be screwed. They say men built society for men. Where? They're the ones still doing all of the things, If there is a plane crash, who gets on the boats first? Women and children. Who's expected to lay down their life for women? Men. Men are expected to do that. So, this whole idea of, we were never equal, men are the superior ones, is actually preposterous because if you really look at it, I would argue that women have always been superior and now they are just like crazy power hungry and demanding. I don't even think they know what they're demanding at this point. I don't even think they know what they want. They just want to see men destroyed.
So I'm joined now by our political correspondent, Julia Sardelli. A curious story, Julia. What's it all about?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we need to take a little bit of a step back and we have to look at this law that came into effect in Germany on January 1st of this year. And this is a law introducing a voluntary military service. That means that young men, when they turn 18, they have to fill out a questionnaire answering questions on their fitness, on their physical fitness, and on their willingness to join the army. Now, this is not any kind of mandatory military service.
So why do they have to do that? And why is it only men? I thought women wanted equality.
But as this local newspaper, the Frankfurter Rundschau, looked into over the last few days, there was a clause in this law that talked about something different. And no one had really noticed it or looked into it for the last few months, even though there was a lot of debate on this law happening. And this clause says that German men between the ages of 18 and 45 have to apply for a permit, basically, from the armed forces if they plan to leave the country for more than 3 months. And now this previously was the case for situations where the country was in grave danger. For example, that there was a heightened threat to security in Germany or if Germany was under armed attack. But now this is going to be the case.
You see what I mean? Feminists will still argue that they are the ones who are oppressed. Men literally cannot travel for longer than 3 months out of their country in Germany. Why? Because if anything happens, they are not expected, but forced to lay down their life for women. And what for? For women who don't appreciate them, for women who talk down to them, for women who emasculate them, for women who have made no place in their lives or society anymore for them. How are no feminists, the so-called equalists of the world, the so-called equitable gender, the fairer sex, why are they not furious about this? Why are they not fighting to also have the same responsibilities? We always hear on these freaking debates online, oh, women can do the hard jobs too. Women should be in the army too. Women can do all of the things that men can do. Well, why are women not passionate about also being in the armed forces and therefore should be furious about this? Why does the same not apply to women? It's ridiculous.
All the time, also when there is no threat.
It's really hard to wrap your mind around this, that people are just waking up to this law now. It's been on the books for a while. Germans famously love to travel, and a lot of young people spend months abroad. That's not that uncommon, or study abroad or work abroad. So what does this mean in practice for young people in Germany?
Yeah, and these are exactly the cases where this would happen if someone's planning a backpacking trip for a longer time, or maybe someone gets a job abroad. They would have to get in touch with the armed forces. A lot of media have reached out to the Defense Ministry and have asked for a clarification on how that would work. And the Defense Ministry has explained that because the military service is voluntary, it would be basically automatic that the permission to leave would be granted. So
to ask for it.
They still have to ask for it, and that's because the army needs to know where men of fighting age are in case of a big event, of a big threat, or of an armed attack. So it's basic.
And yet no women anywhere are bothered by this. This has been out 3 days. I've been on Twitter every single one of those days, and I've not seen any women anywhere saying this is unfair, this is not equality. Either let us women also have the same standards or take it away from men. You can even imagine a feminist being like, but we don't need men to fight for us. Okay, so do something about this. You guys are always up in arms and jumping around, shouting about something. Like, you're always looking for an excuse to get peed off about something and moan about it. So, this is actually something that, people would respect. People would respect feminists getting up in arms about this because it's completely unfair. But it benefits women. It's not the women that have to do this. So they have no problem. And it's just the hypocrisy that annoys me with all of it. Which is it? Either we hate supremacy or we love it. Because how is an ideology going to sustain itself if you can't defend it? And how do you defend, well, we hate supremacy until it benefits us? How do you defend that as a position?
For informational purposes. And the Defense Ministry also said that they realize that the measure is far-reaching. It does encroach on the liberty of people to basically travel or do what they want with their lives. And they are planning to develop a set of guidelines on how to make this reporting process more streamlined, less unbureaucratic, and for it to be less of a burden. But TBA, we don't really know yet when these guidelines are going to be ready.
So, there are two parts to this story, right? There's the actual mobility, question, people having to register if they're of military age when they go abroad for more than 3 months. But there's also the fact that nobody seemed to really notice that this law had come into force, even though it's been on the books now for months. What are people in Germany saying about this? How are political parties responding?
Well, we've seen a lot of debate in the media in the last few days about this specific clause that was in the law. And I imagine a lot of people have been debating this at home. It's been the Easter holidays, families are gathering, and I'm sure adults and younger people have debated this probably at Easter gatherings going out. Politicians, we've seen from the conservatives, who are the political group of the Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who have pushed for this measure. They say that given that the military service is voluntary, they are fine with a less bureaucratic reporting requirement, where basically people just have to let the army know that they're abroad without having to get an approval. But we've seen opposition parties calling for more clarification as to how this is meant to work. And from the left party, we've heard them saying that basically this law was just done clumsily because no one really knew that this clause was in there.
Quite a story. Julia Sadati, our political correspondent, thank you very much.
Und Simon Marian Hoffmann is an artist and youth activist. He founded an initiative for getting young people involved in political decisions. Welcome to DW. Let's start with then your thoughts on this new law.
I'm very shocked. I was very shocked when I heard it last week, and a lot of young people in Germany, because it means a lot of impact in our freedom here. And we have already a lot of resistance and demonstrations against this military service here in Germany. The Gen Z stands up and they want to have self-determined lives. And therefore, it is really a shock. It feels a little bit like they're cheating on us, because like nobody knows that will come in this way.
Why do you think that was? This is the weird thing about this story. This law has been in force since January. It was debated in Parliament, but we're only now 3-4 months later realising the import of what happened. Why do you think it got buried so successfully?
The focus was on the 17 years old, that they have to take this military service, and all the olders, they was infected, and therefore they had no importance.
So, you could argue, well, this is just Germany in isolation. Christine, you said that, it was all of the main institutions of the West that have been overtaken by gynocentrism. This is just one thing happening in Germany. No, it's not. So over on X, I saw Brian Atlas from whatever post this. Curfew for men, says UK politician. This is feminism. Check it out.
In an amendment to create a curfew for men on the streets after 6 p.m, which I feel would make women a lot safer. And discrimination of all kinds would be lessened. Put in an amendment.
Oh yeah, you heard that right.
To create a curfew for men on the streets after 6 p.m.
A curfew for men on the streets after 6 p.m.
Which I feel would make women a lot safer.
Which I feel would make women a lot safer.
And discrimination of all kinds would be lessened.
And discrimination of all kinds will be lessened. So as you can imagine, and as you can probably tell right now, I was so unbelievably irritated by this. I thought it might have been AI. I thought there's no way this can be a real thing. I said, I don't know if this is real. I hope it's not. But how... Okay, maybe we can't say that on YouTube, but go follow me on X if you want my more unhinged takes. I don't know if this is real, I hope it's not, but how stupid is this old lady to say discrimination of all kinds would be lessened whilst discriminating against men? I'm really losing my patience, I hate it here. Yeah, that was me this morning, and I still feel the same. Anyway, so this account, Steve Dasher, said there is, of course, the added problem of the fact that criminals do not obey laws, only the law-abiding do. And I hadn't even thought of that. I was more concerned about what she was saying, this idea that, discrimination whilst discriminating. And also just like, how dare you? How dare you imprison men to their homes past 6 p.m. and claim it's in the name of equality? How dare you? But I didn't even think about the fact that, criminals are not going to be abiding by that. So what, are you going to tell the male police officers that they should also stay inside? The male police officers can't work after 6 p.m. So, for the male criminals that don't abide by this law, who are going to go out and assault women or whatever because they're criminals, what, the men, who's going to protect them? Other women? Women? In the police? Really? Seriously. No one's thought this through, and I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it's real. I can't believe that this happened. I genuinely can't. But it did. It really did. Look at this. Curfew for men. University of Oxford Vice Dean and Professor of Law, Jonathan Herring, a dude suggested this. Argues state must impose curfew on all men to protect women. Women need protecting from themselves, not other men. His article was published in a feminist journal, DOI below. This guy is a feminist. Feminism is anti-male. Reject feminism. When will men in the UK stand up? Brian, I don't know. It's really bad over here. The abstract reads, this article explores the case for a right to a male curfew. It argues the epidemic of male violence, and harassment against women in public spaces is a major breach of women's rights. Now, this is multifaceted because we have a bunch of issues going on over here in the UK. And the problem is that the majority of men who are harassing women in public are not English. They are not from the UK. They are asylum seekers, and therefore they do not have to abide by British law because they are given handouts. They are given special treatment. You know, British people aren't safe in Britain. Yes, because of men, but not because of British men. Obviously, there's always outlying cases, and I'm not here to, say that that's not true and that there are no bad British men. Of course there are. But the problem of young women being harassed right now is because of an immigration problem. That's, another topic. I don't really do politics here on the channel. I talk about, men and women and the whole spiel that's going on there. But I feel like I have to put that in as a disclaimer because this is such a multifaceted problem. The article substantiates that claim and explains why a male curfew would be a reasonable for the state to fulfill its obligations and is therefore required unless an alternative can be found. You can't make it up. Here it is, a right to a male curfew. I can't believe this. But at the same time, what did we expect? Obviously, it's not going to come into law because, how would they enforce it? But someone said in the comments 2 things to point out. The framing of the language is that going out at night is a human right, which means that such a policy would literally dehumanize men. That is the goal. Couldn't the same policy in reverse work just as well? A curfew for women would ensure women's safety since they wouldn't be outside of the house to be victimized. The premise is stupid, but let's just grant that for argument's sake. Exactly. And it's because he's absolutely right. Tommy Boyo, he's absolutely right. The goal, this whole idea of, the policy would literally dehumanize men. That's because it's the goal. It is the goal. It's always been the goal. So when women say things like feminism is about equality, the old feminism is dead, we're going to come up with a new one. And we've come up with one now that, it doesn't infringe upon men's rights. It's all about fairness and equality. Feminists claim they were oppressed. So their logic was to oppress the oppressors. Fine. The logic isn't necessarily, the faulty part of the logic here. Most civilizations that had come from a genuine oppression, the oppressed tend to have some sort of revolution, rise up and do the same to their oppressors. Fine. The problem with feminism is that the story is false. If you want more information on all of the details about the history of feminism, go check out Rachel Wilson. She has a book called Occult Feminism. She was also on the Joe Rogan show recently, and she blew the whole thing wide open. These forefathers, or rather foremothers of feminism, were not oppressed. Secondly, they pulled the wool over everyone's eyes by claiming that they were fighting for equality when the goal was always supremacy. The goal was always to dehumanize men. Today's stories just show that this is still in full operation today. The mission of the objective was always clear. Destroy the family, destroy men, and raise women up as supreme. Not equality. For a while there, it worked. In fact, many men today still believe that feminism was women simply wanting equality. But now it's gone too far. And who wouldn't have a problem with equality for women, right? It's just not the case. But there is a movement. There's a generation of men waking up from this spell. The Trojan horse is wide open. There was a war against men, waged by women. And enough is enough. Feminists, we see you. You're not these equitable, egalitarian freedom fighters that seek equality. You are terrorists, filled with hate, entitled with superiority, and the gig is up. Feminism was always about female supremacy, never anything else. So either start being honest about what it is or shut up. Because I'm so sick of hearing people talk about fairness and equality when it always comes at the expense of men. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments section as always, guys. Today was a bit of a crazy one. I'm so sorry it was a bit all over the place, but there was so much that I wanted to show you guys because it is just ridiculous. I've seen these headlines coming around recently. I didn't think much of them, you know, saying things like feminism is dead and, you know, the old feminism and trying to create a new feminism. And all I'm saying is don't buy it. Don't buy it, because the objective has always been the same. You know, the idea that feminism is about equality has always been a Trojan horse. It's about supremacy, and it's about dehumanization of men. Always has, always will be. But yeah, I'm so intrigued to hear your thoughts on this one. Let me know in the comment section below, guys. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving it a thumbs up on your way out and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell to keep up to date with all of my content. And if you would like to consider donating to the channel, you can do that by clicking the links in the description at Buy Me a Coffee or via PayPal. Big shout out again to Duncan and Chickle Rock 1 from over in the WhatsApp community. And if you'd like to join myself, Duncan and Chickle Rock over there, you can click the WhatsApp link in the description as well. And on that note, I'll see you very soon in the next one, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.